Thank you for joining us today, and let's get right to it. All right. So we're going to cover 5 topics: planning, about how to write a macro, and laying it out, a bit about the measurement options file, but the importance of that, especially in writing a macro. Making a shortcut. Workflow toolbars, similar to some things that used to be, you could do in Image Pro Plus, where you could put a nice little toolbar up about how to do that in Image Pro, and a little bit about interactivity, about the ways to make a macro interactive and the 2 ways of doing that. So starting off, planning. This will save you a lot of time and effort. Make a plan. Scratch paper, whatever, Word document, notepad, but write down the steps that you want to do. This will simplify your life a lot. It also gets logic down as you're walking through about what you want to do. One of the key things when you're doing this is resetting the measurement options. That's that little green circle. I'll show you when we're going to do an interactive talk. But to reset the measurement options, always start with a fresh, clean slate. So you're not carrying anything over from a previous type of analysis. You don't want the settings for maybe something else that's completely different, maybe doing a fluorescent versus a bright field, other settings, different gating factors. You want to start fresh, so you're always knowing where you're starting from. Saving the file settings. If you're going through and there's different settings you need to save, measurement options file. If you're using data collector for batch process, using something with learning classification, you always want to save the settings files. When you're writing a macro, if you're starting fresh, new macro, create a new project. That will simplify your life a lot because that'll keep it clean and self-contained. And use the default locations for all settings files and macros. And the reason why I say that is Image Pro is aware of the relative paths. So if you start creating different measurement options files, different data collector files, or you have maybe some ROI where you're using Features Manager, by leaving everything in the default location and creating a new project, you can easily package that. It's more or less a zip file. But after you're done writing, testing everything, you can package that macro and send that to someone. And all they have to do is put it in the scripts folder, unzip it, and everything will be put back in the relative paths. All the settings files, all the dependencies, they'll all be put back in place. It'll save you a lot of time. And editing, again, it's one of those features in the macro editing capability within Image Pro. So once you create the new project, you can then start recording your macro, and then always test your macro, walk through it, rerun it, make sure everything's behaving the way it should. So that's just general steps for blending the macro. Measurement options file as it relates to macros. This is the count size tab. These are where you save. It's a measurement options file, the .iq file. And the importance of this is that saves a whole range of information about how count size is set up. And what's nice is when you recall that, you're always comparing and rerunning the assay in exactly the same way. You don't have to worry about, geez, did I set something different? Was I doing something different magnifications that had different requirements? Everything is done exactly the same way, and that's important, especially when we're trying to do the same analysis over and over again, whether it's tomorrow or 6 months from now. So let's just kind of show you where I am in there. Fairly simple image. This is just some wetting paper with aerosol drops on that will turn purple. But the measurement options file. This is this file here that when I have count size set up, it can also do with manual measurements. But this will say how segmentation is set up. If I'm using smart segmentation, it will include how smart segmentation is set up. I have automatic splitting on. What measurement parameters do I want to measure? It will keep all of that. And if I'm filtering anything out, all those gating parameters, all those filters for filtering out, if I want something to be of a certain size, or if it's maybe just some background, to skip it, to ignore it, that will get recorded with the measurement options file, .iq. And also, and equally as important, how Image Pro counts. You'll keep track of all this. You'll keep track of your fonts. Do I want to have text turned on, labels turned on or off? How do I want it displayed? It saves all of that. In addition, it will save how the data table is set up. and also whatever naming convention you use. Most important thing you can do, save that file. Then we record that in a macro. Then it makes it very simple, and then it's easy to also feed into a batch process. It's nothing more of setting everything up. And I'll just do, and this is the reset button I mentioned. Puts everything back to the factory default state. And when I load that file, I can then simply come in and count. Everything will be counted correctly. Again, most important thing you can do when running a macro is to have that file to do it. Otherwise, I've seen people do it. They record the steps, they record setting all these parameters or anything else, and then when they go to run it, all of a sudden, maybe 2 weeks later, someone else was using this program, multi-user facility. They were setting things up completely differently. And you sure remembers its last settings. By using this file, everything's put back into that known state. All right. Quick Access Toolbar. This is from the Automation tab, and I'll show that in a second, is you can create shortcuts in the Quick Access Toolbar up in the upper left-hand corner of Image Pro. So instead of looking at other places or launching the Project Explorer to run a macro, if you're running a macro or set of macros over and over again, you can create a shortcut. It's done in the Quick Access Toolbar. It's very easy to set up. You highlight the particular macro itself in the Automation or Project Workbench and turn on Quick Access. So let me show you what that looks like. So I've written a macro for this. Let me show you. Let's delete the count. So I'm going to go to Automate. I've already written the macro, and this is the Project Workbench. This is where we do macro editing. But I have a simple macro. It's really 2 steps. Open my measurement options, load those, count, show the data table. But to create that shortcut, all I have to simply do is highlight the macro itself. Again, each command, each macro has its own properties. And what I'll say is Quick Access. Down here in the properties, I will then load Image Pro. And what you'll see in the upper left-hand side is there's my shortcut. Normally, to run the macro, you have to go to either Project Explorer or go into, the shortcut here for Project Explorer. But if you're on any other location, you always have to go back to the Automate. What's nice in the Quick Access ribbon, I can just simply run the macro right from there, and it will do everything. So if you're doing the same things over and over again, or a series of operations or a series of macros, this will save a lot of time and effort. Macro interactivity. More or less, how do you make a particular step or steps within a macro interactive? Maybe there's a decision point. Yes. Typical case, I need to draw a region of interest. Maybe, there's something about that image that I need to make make a decision, draw a region of interest. So maybe you need to check the threshold in the segmentation. This is where we can make a macro interactive, where it stops at that spot. You can add a prompt, and then the user can make whatever interaction necessary and then go on. So it's very simple. Record your basic macro, and there's a decision to make. If it's something where you need to draw something like an ROI, you need to take some manual measurements, don't record that. You're going to have to edit the macro, pull all those out, and then put in the right tools. When you're doing anything like that, the easiest thing is to record macro going through the basic steps, and then after you've done it, edit it, and I'll add in that particular feature, and I'll show that in a second. And the general idea is, here's a macro, simple recording. You've seen this macro. I didn't put anything about a region of interest in. I can, through the toolbox, literally drag in a particular tool, put it into the macro, select it, and this was a newer feature we added in an earlier version of Image Pro, is to make it interactive. So you can just simply say yes. I can then add a prompt, select my right input, and then it'll be interactive. So let me quickly go through that. So let's take a look at my macro. So I already have a basic outline. Here's my macro. I'm in the automation project workbench. So to add a region of interest, easiest way is, instead of searching through all these various processes, I can simply type in region of interest, ROI, find the right tool. This will put image probe in the right mode. I can make it a polygon, rectangle. I'm just going to add polygon. And I need to insert the right place. As you can see, the little splitter bar is there where it's going to insert. It'll place it in there. My macro automatically went to an edit mode. At this point, I'm just going to close that. Highlight the tool. Two things to do. One is I want this to be interactive. So I can simply select interactive. I can put a prompt. Please draw ROI. ROI, and then press OK when done. Now, one final step. This feature, this command, doesn't know what to work on. It needs to work on an image. And I haven't told it that. And for everyone that's written any macros, one of the nice things in Image Pros, you can see exactly what image it's working on. Here it's called Doc1. So I need to tell it what to work on. Simply select the input, document 1, and when I load it, one thing will happen. You'll notice it's now Image Pro knows that this command, the ROI, needs to work on document 1, and by seeing the side profile, you know it's an interactive command. So how does that behave? Very simple. I can now select my macro. Please draw ROI. I'm already in the right mode. In essence, I'm in a pause mode, but I've already have the right tool selected, so I can draw a region of interest. Press OK, and then the macro will finish running. And I'm done. So that's how you can make a macro interactive. The other way is, if there's a specific command, you can also make it interactive by simply, if it's one that's appropriate for doing it, this isn't the best thing, but if there was a tool in there, I can actually select, I should add a count, but you would select, as we did here, select interactive. Let me just get to the right place. Interactive, and turn that on. All right, finally, Image Pro has the capability of developing apps where you have a specifically interface, where you can have commands, features. We have the fiber thickness app, the metallic corrosion, odorless analysis. Those are written apps. Depending upon the level needed and the sophistication, sometimes involves some more advanced macro writing skills. But for a lot of things, people just need a simple interface without looking, going through rooms, and you can do that simply by putting together an app that either goes through the steps, as in here, or you can actually link macros to this, or you can do some combination. And it's a very simple thing to do. Just as you write a macro, we want to create a new project. And so if you want to put a macro and link it to a button, write your macros, then we'll add an app to the current project. And then we can link commands to buttons, we can link macros to buttons. Very straightforward. I'm just going through a real quick show and tell, going to Image Pro. To this macro, I've actually done something else. Is you can go through and add an app, and it will actually add it to this. And you can create multiple apps, but all I did was create an app. I named it Droplet. It's going to that project, my spray drops, and then it will put a blank. Let me just, whoops. I'm just going to delete these. It gives you a blank palette. From here, I can then pull in whatever feature I need. For example, my count button, I'm just going to show what I did. And it will find all versions of that, all instances, and I can bring in count. I can add that. So I can add a series of buttons, or again, if I have written a macro, I can drag that in from here. What's nice is you have some level of customization that you can do here. So if I select this, just to kind of show some of the things, I can change the text line. Oops, I need to add some more. Here we go. Can overlay text. Doesn't make a lot of sense in this case, image above text. But you have those capabilities of how this looks. Again, I can also change what this image is. You can put other images in there. So you have a level of customization that you can add. And then if I wanted to put, open images, I can just drag that in. So you can actually set up a workflow by going through a simple application. And when you're done, you've saved your project. Oops. That project now becomes available under the apps. So when I press droplets, there it is. Again, this is just a quick little show and tell. But again, you can build your own palette, your own app, walking through the steps that they need to do analysis.